Hi, I'm Beau Mahurin, the co-writer and composer of H. Holmes the Musical, and I'm inviting you to discover the devil inside. Okay, so last time we introduced where we are in the development of H. Holmes in terms of the writing, in terms of the concepts, as well as the composition of where we are now, creating the score, the songs, the music that will become the musical. Well, it seems only appropriate to take that discussion to the next step by first introducing what we are doing with our title character, H. Holmes himself, who is an historical figure. This is all based upon true events. Before I get too deep into that discussion about him as both a character and an historical figure, I want to bring up a topic that is near and dear to my heart that I have been serving in the capacity of for several opportunities over the last years. Both as a stage director, music director, and also just as a general theater enthusiast. Now, if you are a theatrically minded person and you do not yet know this term, I'm going to put it on the screen beneath me. It is dramaturg. And dramaturgs work in dramaturgy. Got that? You're on the internet. You're watching a video. If you don't know those terms, go look them up. A dramaturg is basically a professional within a theater or an opera company that focuses on research and development. They're kind of like a in-house historian. And let me put it better. This is a quote from Shane Breaux, who is the resident dramaturg at the New York Shakespeare Exchange. "We are text analyzers, we are researchers, we are objective observers, we are expert question askers, we are a resource for the director and playwright and actors and designers, and we are creative diplomats who liaise with those involved." That is a great quote, by the way. Thank you, Mr. Breaux. But basically, having served in that capacity and working with Derek, who has his background in political science and criminology, he's very much a true-life crimes person. We really want to focus on the psychology behind this. And that brings up another very important thing. For those of you who are major internet users, especially those Tumblr folks out there, you may have seen recently especially, there was I guess you could call it notorious, infamous, famous, pick your favorite, photo that was posted to Tumblr featuring, and this is an historical photo, Hitler holding hands with a small girl, a little child. Now, the reason I bring this up is because one of the wonderful comment threads that came out of this, which is relevant to what we're sharing here. This is, again, a Tumblr user, so I apologize if I cannot give you proper credit here. You know what's so uncomfortable about this photo? It shows that perhaps one of the most evil men in history was a human being. We want to see evil people as evil, screaming horrible stuff over a desk with 20 microphones and 20,000 people saluting them. That way the evil is clear and recognizable. This shows a completely different image. It scares you because that means the evil isn't a stereotype. That evil is not recognizable. That evil could be anyone. It scares you because this shows what could be lurking inside anyone and you'll never even know. Now, for those of you who've had trouble sleeping, I'm sure you're not going to be able to sleep any better. But I bring that up because now it's time to take a look at the historical twist on H. Holmes himself. So I'm sure you're wondering, what does a comment about a Hitler photograph have to do with Herman Webster Mudgett, alias Dr. H. Holmes? Well, first of all, they are both historical figures, which means we do have some insight into what they were like as individuals in their own day. Now, in the case of Dr. Holmes, I have some quotations I found from some of his own contemporaries, friends, colleagues, those closest to him. And first of all, if you think about a serial killer, you would think that there'd be this darkness, this sort of evilness that exudes from him like some kind of cinematic villain, and it's very much not the case. For example, Holmes was a self-made entrepreneur in his 20s. He was handsome, at least for his day. He was considered to be a well-dressed individual. He spoke with good grammar, almost a refined, gentlemanly-like personality. Even those who would come stalking him asking for money that was long past due, he could sweet-talk them over drinks and cigars, and they'd walk away like they were old friends. In fact, one of his employees even has stated, quote, "He was the smoothest man I ever saw. You couldn't have trouble with him if you tried." I don't think that sounds like a murderer villain to me, does it? Oh, it gets better. Hang in there. One of his wives, and yes, you heard me, one of his wives, in addition to being a multiple murderer and a fraud scam artist, he was also a polygamist. He had 3 wives at the same time, and none of which knew about each other until the very end. One of his wives, Myrta Belknap, is quoted as saying, "In his home life, I do not think there was ever a better man than my husband. He never spoke an unkind word to me or our little girl or my mother. He was never vexed or irritable, but was always happy and free from care." She even went on to say that he was very comfortable and very kind around babies. Babies seemed to love him. He had animals. He was very good with animals. And here's something fun to think about. A serial killer who lived such a pristine existence. He never drank, he never smoked, he never gambled. So where did this all come from? Myrta's uncle was one of the people who saw the darkness in him early, and in fact is recorded later as part of a deposition, saying that he invited him up to explore parts of his personal office building structure. The uncle was just, "I'm not going up there, I don't trust you." So yes, there were people who could pick up on that darkness, but if you look at the historical records, most of those indicators don't show up till later in his existence, and some of his acts later in life really proved to be very dark, very heavy, and that real sort of creepiness factor finally came out. Ironically, his most famous personal quote is, "I was born with the devil inside me." Now that's a whole nother discussion for a whole nother installment, honestly. But with that in mind, we have a refined, gentlemanly, well-dressed, almost puritanical personality who demonstrates intelligence and was a bit of a ladies' man. What do you do with that musically and dramatically? Well, let's go to the piano and I will show you. So since we're looking at Holmes from a life picture, not just a here's the criminal, here's the psychopath, sociopath, we're focusing on a life arc. We also wanted to instill some humanity back into the person. Now, you're probably wondering, how is that possible again? But go back to that original concept of even what we think of now as the most villainous, evil people have a side of humanity to them. And so Derek and I basically decided, and thank you Derek by the way, I'm going to shout out to you, but the reason why is because even he in his original draft form of the show started off with Holmes in college. And yes, he did go to college. Herman Webster Mudgett, remember that's his birth name, it'll come back to haunt you. But Mudgett went to school in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Yes, he was a University of Michigan grad, and he was in the medical field. If you go back, you can look it up online. Tell you what, I'm going to pop up a picture of him back in his college days right now. Look at this. Sort of funny to think that a serial killer has a yearbook photo, right? Our first scene takes place on campus at the University of Michigan. I should say the first scene of our show, there is an introduction which I'm going to save as a surprise for later with another character. But Holmes begins in his college days. And we have a moment, and this is also again on record, this is shown having basically based on some truth, that he would have run-ins with his professors. And part of the sociopath, psychopath personality is this sort of almost overbearingness, this sort of I'm in charge, you're not, I know more than you. And so we sort of took that early stage serial killer mentality and twisted it to that youthfulness. In fact, when you first hear Holmes's solo, his first song of the show, I will bet you that you're going to want to root for him. You're probably wondering how, why? Well, just like any college kid, he had aspirations. And in fact, the night this video was recorded, Derek and I had sat down to discuss just that. Where was he coming from? Where is he going? And one of the sounds, I'm going to give a shout out to Alan Menken and Maury Yeston, because you are two of my composers that influenced this particular sound, and for those of you who are musical theater nerds, you're going to hear that. We wanted something that could come back as an ominous feeling, but still have the drive, the push. Now, you're not going to hear a melody. Sorry, this is a teaser. But you at least get to hear what it's like from a young Holmes' perspective. So we have the push, the drive, meets the darkness, could go either direction, as we have a run-in with our professor, and suddenly we're left to sort of consider where we are wanting to go with life. So we started off with a very simple... hear that sort of arc that comes and goes. It's almost like a wave. But when we shift it, we go from a minor into a... So we can keep that sort of minor rush moving forward without slowing things down. When we do come to a resolution, when we come to, for those of you who speak musical theater, an I want song moment, it builds now out of a minor into a major. That almost optimistic lift, that rush, and I'm sure some of you are out there going, oh, that sounds so happy! And that's the point. We want to capture that human essence. And it begins with any young person with their goals, where they've come from in life, where they're going next. You want to hear an irony? As our Facebook fan followers, friends, etc., the name of the song is In My Hands. If you can get the poetical reference, comment below. See if you can guess why. Now the next major moment that we have with Holmes is one of the first times that he falls in love. And Holmes, being the ladies' man, smooth talker, sweet, charmy, champagne-y type, we naturally wanted to give him a champagne-y kind of feel. And I'm going to open up my notebook to where I've got my first stage. Now, for those of you who've ever come to our private readings, you may have heard this one before. But this is going to be the bare bones concept melody, again, at least initially, for the love song, which Holmes, and here's the irony, by the way, I'll let you in on the inner secret before I play this. The love song appears when we meet Myrta. Myrta, the one who was quoted earlier, was the wife, second wife of Holmes, and they lived in Chicago together. Well, mostly. That gets into a whole other story too. But when she arrives in Chicago, it's a chance to see him having a social life, having a personal life, building, but we also sort of see what kind of personal life he may have had. So we wanted a champagne-y, smooth, smarmy kind of sound, and it almost sounds like something Fred and Ginger would dance to. It seems appropriate that such a smooth talker would get that too. Like that one? Congratulations, you just heard one of your first melodies from the show. The lyrics will be coming shortly, so once we get our finalized songs, we'll stick them in. Here's the irony. That song, that sweet, romantic, champagne-y froth, is going to be used not just for Myrta, she gets the big version of the song, but when he runs into two of his later mistresses, that song is also employed, and you're going to get to find out why later on. So where do we go from here? Well, let's just say that the first time we get to see the Holmes getting his hands dirty, ironically, is with one of those important females in his existence. For those of you who've heard our teaser theme, it's always at the beginning of these clips, you know it already. That sort of sweet... There's a darker fugal form, which I'll share with you in a minute. For those of you who speak Bach and classical music, fugue, yes, fugal. But we took sort of a major key version, a very sweet and almost spiderwebby Victorian Valentine kind of feel, because ironically, for the first time we get to hear what Holmes thinks of all these women in his life, in a homage / dark comedic parody almost, called The Fairer Sex. Now I'm not going to give you the where it fits into the show just yet. But let's just say that it's probably the least suspecting place you will ever find, and it's the first time we get to see Holmes really, shall we say, choking the life out of things. But we took the major key version of that delicate theme, turned it into something almost frou-frou. So you can imagine that very easily going from playful to cynical, and that's exactly what it does. So now you've heard 3 of Holmes's principal solos, at least the rudimentary form of them. How does it end? Well, for those of you who know the history, you know it ends badly. But we can't let our leading dark anti-hero, that's the appropriate term, go down in flames without one final hurrah. And that's where we bring in that last concept, sort of the fugal version of the main theme of the whole show. The main theme, by the way, the title is A Terrible Thing, and you're going to get to find out why later. But this is his final implementation. When he finally reveals the true colors, what's really been going on inside that brain the whole time, it's not pretty. We go from the spiderwebby Victorian sound once again of, and we turn it into something that Bach would have been happy with. The reason why, well, first of all, not only ties in the main theme, but you may have remembered that from the sweet filigree from earlier. That's where it comes from. It's sort of everything turning into something grosser, for lack of a better term at the moment. And that's what we want. That fugal darkness where we finally release, and this is the song based on that famous quote, "The devil inside." That's where our running phrase comes from. I love the fact that it's not only chromatic, so it plays on all those in-betweens, but it really doesn't end. It just keeps cycling around. And if you think about it, that's really the brain. And that, ladies and gentlemen, you have just gotten your first major clue into how the show is formatted. If you like what you've heard, if you have questions about what you've heard, if you'd like to learn more about what's being done with the character or the development, post those questions below as comments. We would love to respond to them. Derek will be joining me for some of these installments later on. We would love to hear what you have to say, your input, your enthusiasm, even suggestions like, what about this, what about that? We would like to hear what kind of feedback, and who knows, maybe your brain is on the same wavelength as ours is. So that brings an end to this installment of this week's The Method to the Madness behind the scenes at H.H. Holmes, the musical. If you like what you heard, if you want to share your enthusiasm, please feel free to share, comment below, leave your feedback. We would love to hear what you liked, what you didn't like, what you'd like to learn more about before you make a final decision. Maybe even throw out some suggestions of your own. So please feel free. That's what these social media things are for, after all, don't forget. We'd love to hear from you. Don't forget to tell your friends about this as well, hhholmesthemusical.com, or else you can follow us and like us, or you can do both. Go to facebook.com/hhholmesmusical. And either way, you can keep up with updates, new postings, new featurettes like this one, and we will see you next time for another inside glimpse of the devil inside.